Pack your bags. Those 3 words changed everything when I came home to find my kids crying in the basement. But let me back up and tell you how we got here, because this story isn't just about one terrible day. It's about a pattern of favoritism that had been building for months. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm a 35-year-old single mum to 2 amazing kids, Emma, who's 8, and Jake, who's 6. After my divorce 6 months ago, I made what I thought was a smart financial decision. Moving back in with my parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, to get back on my feet. They had this big house with plenty of room, and they seemed genuinely excited to have their grandchildren around. At first, everything felt perfect. Emma got the pretty pink bedroom on the 2nd floor with the bay window that overlooked Mom's rose garden. Jake claimed the blue room right next to hers, complete with his superhero posters covering every inch of the walls. They were so happy, running up and down those stairs, laughing and playing like kids should. My parents seemed to love having them there, always talking about how wonderful it was to have children's laughter filling the house again. But then my older brother David started visiting more often with his 10-year-old son Tyler. David had always been the golden child. The successful businessman, the one who carried on the family name, the son who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. And Tyler? Well, Tyler was his mini-me, and my parents treated him like he was made of pure gold. The first sign something was off happened about 3 months into our stay. Tyler came for a weekend visit, and suddenly Emma and Jake were being told to share their toys nicely and let Tyler pick the movie since he's the guest. When Tyler wanted to use Jake's new bike, my 6-year-old was expected to hand it over without complaint. When Emma was working on a puzzle she'd been saving for days, Tyler decided he wanted to do it instead, and guess who had to give it up? Tyler is older, my mother would say with that sweet smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He needs more challenging activities. Emma and Jake can find something else to do. I started noticing other things too. When Tyler achieved something at school, it was front page news in our house. My parents would call relatives, post on Facebook, act like he'd just won a Nobel Prize. But when Emma brought home an A+ on her spelling test, or Jake learned to tie his shoes, it was met with a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before they went back to whatever they were doing. The comments got more pointed as weeks went by. Tyler is so advanced for his age, my father would say at dinner. He's reading at a high school level already. Real leadership material, just like his father. Then he'd glance at my kids, who were just trying to eat their mac and cheese in peace, and add, "Not everyone can be exceptional, I suppose." My mother was more subtle, but somehow worse. "Oh, Tyler is so handsome," she'd coo while showing pictures to her friends. "He's going to be a real heartbreaker, and so smart. David says he's already talking about becoming a doctor or a lawyer." Then, almost as an afterthought, "Emma and Jake are sweet children too, of course." Sweet children too, like they were consolation prizes. I tried to convince myself I was being oversensitive. These were my parents, after all. They loved my kids, didn't they? But the feeling in my gut kept growing stronger. Emma started asking me why Grandma and Grandpa seemed happier when Tyler was around. Jake stopped showing them his drawings because they'd glance at them for half a second before turning their attention back to whatever Tyler was doing. The breaking point came on a Thursday in October. I had to work late. I just started a new job at a marketing firm downtown, trying to rebuild my career after the divorce. I called my mom to let her know I'd be home around 7 instead of 5:30. "That's fine, dear," she said. "Tyler is coming for a few days anyway. David has some business meetings in the city." Something in her tone made my stomach clench, but I pushed the feeling aside. I needed this job. I needed to prove I could stand on my own 2 feet and provide for my children. When I pulled into the driveway that evening, I noticed David's BMW was already there. The house looked normal from the outside, warm light glowing in the windows, the porch light on to welcome me home. I had no idea my world was about to shatter. I walked through the front door, calling out my usual, "I'm home." But instead of hearing Emma and Jake's excited voices yelling, "Mommy," like they did every day, I heard something that made my blood run cold, crying, muffled, heartbroken crying, coming from somewhere below. I dropped my purse and followed the sound, my heels clicking on the hardwood floors as I made my way to the basement stairs. What I saw when I reached the bottom will haunt me forever. Emma was sitting on an old couch we used to store down there, her arms wrapped around Jake, both of them sobbing. Their belongings, clothes, toys, books, the little stuffed animals they slept with every night, were scattered around in hastily packed boxes and garbage bags. "Mommy!" Emma cried when she saw me, jumping up and running into my arms. "They made us move down here. They said we had to." Jake was right behind her, his little face red and puffy from crying. "Oh, I don't like it down here, Mommy. It's dark and it smells funny." My heart was breaking into a million pieces, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What happened, sweetheart? Who made you move down here?" "Grandma and Grandpa," Emma whispered, like she was afraid they might hear her. "They said Tyler needed the good rooms upstairs because he's more important than us." More important than us. Those words hit me like a physical blow. I looked around the basement at my children's belongings thrown around like garbage, at the damp concrete walls, at the single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. This wasn't a bedroom. This was storage space. This was where you put things you didn't value. "Stay right here," I told them, kissing both their heads. "Mommy needs to talk to Grandma and Grandpa." I climbed those stairs with my heart pounding and my hands shaking with rage. I found my parents in the living room with David, all of them laughing at something on TV like nothing had happened. Tyler was sprawled on the floor with Jake's tablet playing games without a care in the world. "What the hell did you do to my children?" I demanded. My mother looked up with that innocent expression she'd perfected over the years. "Oh, Sarah, you're home. We were just making some space arrangements. Tyler needs a proper room for the next few weeks while David handles his business." "Space arrangements?" I could barely keep my voice level. "You moved my kids to the basement. They're down there crying their eyes out." My father didn't even look away from the TV. "It's temporary, Sarah. Tyler is family too. And he's older. He needs a real bedroom, not some makeshift arrangement." "Emma and Jake are family," I shouted. "They're your grandchildren." "Of course they are," my mother said, but her tone was dismissive. "But you have to understand. Tyler is David's son. He's carrying on the Mitchell name. He has different needs, different potential. There it was, the ugly truth they'd been dancing around for months. David finally spoke up, not even bothering to look embarrassed. "Sarah, you're being dramatic. It's just for a couple weeks. Emma and Jake will be fine in the basement. Kids are adaptable." "Tyler is our only grandson," my father added, as if that explained everything. "The only one who'll continue the family legacy. Surely you can see why he should have priority." I stared at these people, my own parents, my own brother, and felt something inside me break. Not just my heart, but something deeper. The last thread of hope that I mattered to them, that my children mattered to them. That's when Tyler looked up from the tablet, my 6-year-old son's tablet, and said with the casual cruelty that only children can manage, "Emma and Jake don't really need nice rooms anyway. They're just girls and babies." Just girls and babies. My mother actually smiled at him. "That's right, sweetheart. You understand." I looked at my parents, at my brother, at this child who'd been taught that my babies were somehow less worthy of love and respect, and something crystallized inside me. A cold, hard clarity that cut through all the pain and confusion. I smiled, not a happy smile, but the kind of smile that comes when you finally understand exactly who people really are. "You know what?" I said, my voice suddenly calm. "You're absolutely right. Tyler does deserve the best." My parents looked relieved. David nodded approvingly. They thought I was finally seeing reason. I turned and walked back down to the basement, where Emma and Jake were still huddled together on that old couch, looking up at me with such trust and hope in their little faces. "Mommy, do we have to stay down here?" Emma asked. I knelt down in front of them and took their small hands in mine. "No, sweetheart, we don't." "Are we going back to our real rooms?" Jake asked hopefully. I looked into their innocent eyes and made a decision that would change everything. "Better than that, baby. We're going to our real home." "But this is home," Emma said, confused. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I'd felt in months. "This isn't our home anymore. Our home is wherever we're wanted and loved, and that's not here." I stood up and looked around at their scattered belongings, at this basement they'd been relegated to like unwanted furniture. "Pack your bags," I called out loud enough for everyone upstairs to hear. "Are we going on a trip?" Jake asked. "Yes," I said, already pulling out my phone to call the one person I knew would understand. "We're going on the most important trip of our lives." As I dialed Lisa's number, my college roommate who'd become a successful lawyer, I heard footsteps on the stairs. My mother appeared, looking concerned. "Sarah, what are you doing? You're not serious about leaving, are you? You know you need our help right now." I looked at her as Lisa's phone began to ring. "You know what, Mum? I think I need different kind of help, the kind that comes from people who actually love my children." "Of course we love Emma and Jake," she protested. "We're just trying to be practical. Tyler has special needs." "Lisa," I said as my friend picked up. "It's Sarah. I need to ask you about something. Remember you always told me I should look into what Grandma Henderson left me. I think it's time." Lisa's voice came through the phone like a lifeline. "Sarah, what's wrong? You sound upset." "I need you to check something for me," I said, watching my mother hover at the bottom of the basement stairs, clearly trying to listen in. "Grandma Henderson's will. What exactly did she leave me?" There was a pause. "Sarah, we talked about this years ago. You said you didn't want to deal with the paperwork, remember? You were going through the divorce and said it was too complicated." "I know. But things have changed." I looked at Emma and Jake, who were quietly putting their stuffed animals into a pillowcase. "I need to know exactly what she left me, all of it." "Okay, let me pull the file. I've been keeping copies of everything just in case you ever changed your mind." I could hear papers rustling. "Sarah, are you sure you're ready for this? There are some conditions attached that might surprise you." "I'm ready for anything at this point." My mother was pretending to organise old Christmas decorations, but I could see her straining to hear every word. "All right," Lisa continued. "Your grandmother left you the Victorian house on Elm Street, the one she lived in for 40 years. It's been maintained by a property management company she set up. Current market value is approximately $800,000. I nearly dropped the phone. 800,000? That's not all. There's also a trust fund worth about $500,000, specifically designated for your children's education and your living expenses. But Sarah, here's the important part. There are conditions. What kind of conditions? You have to be living independently. The will specifically states that if you're financially dependent on family members who don't treat you and your children with equal respect and dignity, the trust activates immediately. It's like she knew something like this might happen. I felt my knees go weak. Grandma Henderson had always been the sharpest person I knew, even in her 80s. She'd seen through people like they were made of glass. Lisa, I need you to come over, now, tonight. Sarah, what's going on? I looked at my kids, then at my mother, who was now openly eavesdropping. I'll explain when you get here. Just bring all the paperwork, every single document. I'm on my way. After I hung up, my mother finally stopped pretending to organise and came over. Sarah, honey, you're not thinking clearly. You can't just leave. Where would you go? How would you support the children? I guess we'll find out, I said, helping Emma fold her favourite dress. This is ridiculous. My father's voice boomed from the top of the stairs. You're being emotional and irrational. Tyler will only be here for 2 weeks. And then what? I called back. The next time he visits, will my kids get moved to the garage, the shed? Where does it end? David appeared behind my father. Sarah, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Family means making sacrifices for each other. You're right, I said, standing up with Jake's stuffed dinosaur in my hands. Family does mean making sacrifices. I just never realised my children were supposed to be the sacrifice. Lisa arrived an hour later with a briefcase full of documents and a look of fierce determination I remembered from our college days, when she'd argued her way out of parking tickets and unfair grades. She took one look at Emma and Jake sitting on that basement couch, surrounded by garbage bags of their belongings, and her jaw tightened. Where's everyone else? She asked. Upstairs, probably planning their next family meeting about how to divide up my kids' remaining possessions, I said bitterly. Good. Let's go have a conversation with them. We climbed the stairs together, Emma and Jake trailing behind us. In the living room, my parents and David were huddled together on the couch, while Tyler continued playing with Jake's tablet, completely oblivious to the storm brewing around him. Good evening, Lisa said in her lawyer voice, the one that had intimidated opposing counsel in courtrooms across the state. I'm Lisa Chen, Sarah's attorney. I understand there's been some discussion about living arrangements. My father waved dismissively. This is a family matter. We don't need lawyers involved. Actually, you do, Lisa said, opening her briefcase and pulling out a thick folder. Because this family matter involves a legal document that was filed 12 years ago. And I think it's time everyone understood the implications. She spread the papers across the coffee table with practiced efficiency. This is the last will and testament of Margaret Henderson, Sarah's maternal grandmother. Would you like me to read the relevant sections aloud? My mother's face had gone pale. That's not necessary. We're all family here. I think it is necessary, Lisa said firmly, because it seems like some family members have forgotten what Margaret Henderson valued most. She cleared her throat and began to read in a clear, carrying voice. To my beloved granddaughter, Sarah Mitchell, I leave my house at 1247 Elm Street, along with all furnishings and belongings therein. I also establish a trust fund of $500,000 for Sarah's use and for the education and welfare of any children she may have. David laughed. A trust fund? Sarah never mentioned any trust fund. Lisa continued reading. However, these bequests come with specific conditions. If, at any time, Sarah finds herself in a living situation where she or her children are treated as secondary family members, or where favoritism is shown based on gender or birth order, or where her children are denied equal treatment, dignity, or respect within the family structure, then all conditions are immediately waived and Sarah gains full access to both the property and the trust fund. The room went dead silent except for the sound of Tyler's game. Furthermore, Lisa continued, I have observed patterns in my own family that concern me deeply. If my granddaughter ever finds herself in a position where her children, especially any daughters, are treated as less valuable than male grandchildren, I want her to know that she has the means to remove herself and her children from such a harmful environment immediately. My mother's hands were shaking. She never said anything about this. She did, actually, I said quietly. Remember when she used to tell you that all grandchildren should be treated equally? Remember how she always made sure Emma got the same Christmas presents as Tyler, even though he was older? Remember how she used to say that a family that plays favourites isn't really a family at all? My father stood up abruptly. This is nonsense. We love all our grandchildren equally. Do you? Lisa asked, gesturing toward the basement stairs. Because from what I can see, 2 of those grandchildren are living in a basement, while one has been given the best rooms in the house. That doesn't sound very equal to me. Tyler is, David started. Tyler is what? I interrupted. More important, more valuable, more deserving of love and respect because he's a boy? He's carrying on the family name, my father shouted. And what exactly is that name worth? Lisa asked coldly. If it's built on the idea that some children matter more than others. She pulled out another document. Margaret Henderson was very specific about this. She wrote a letter to be read along with the will. Would you like to hear it? Before anyone could object, she began reading again. If you are reading this letter, it means my granddaughter has found herself in the situation I most feared, being made to feel like a second-class member of her own family. Sarah, my dear, you are worth more than that. Your children are worth more than that. Every child deserves to be loved completely, without conditions, without comparison, without having to earn their place in the family hierarchy. Emma had crept closer to me and was holding my hand tightly. Jake was pressed against my other side, his eyes wide as he tried to understand what was happening. Lisa's voice grew stronger as she continued. I have seen what favoritism does to families. I have watched it destroy relationships, damage children's self-worth, and create wounds that never truly heal. If you are hearing this letter, it means those patterns have continued into another generation, and I will not allow my legacy to be part of that destruction. My mother was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of panic. Sarah, please, we can work this out. We can fix this. The house has been maintained and is ready for immediate occupancy, Lisa said, ignoring my mother's pleas. The trust fund has been growing with interest for 12 years. Sarah, you and your children can move in tomorrow if you want to. Tyler finally looked up from the tablet. What does this mean? Are Emma and Jake getting a house? The innocent question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. It means, David said through gritted teeth, that Sarah is about to make a very stupid decision that she'll regret for the rest of her life. Actually, I said, my voice steady for the first time in months, it means I'm about to make the smartest decision I've ever made. I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and saw them clearly for perhaps the first time in my adult life. You want to know what Grandma Henderson saw? She saw a family that was already broken. She saw parents who thought love was something you rationed based on arbitrary rules. She saw the damage you were doing and decided to give me a way out. Sarah, my mother pleaded, we raised you better than this. You don't abandon family. You're right, I said. I don't abandon family, but you abandoned us first. The moment you decided my children were worth less than Tyler, you stopped being family. I knelt down in front of Emma and Jake. Do you want to see our new house? Emma's eyes lit up. We really get our own house, Mummy? We really do, sweetheart. With big windows and a garden where you can plant flowers. And nobody can make us move to the basement? Jake asked. Nobody can make us move anywhere we don't want to go, I promised. As we headed toward the door with our few belongings, my father made one last desperate attempt. Sarah, think about this rationally. You need us. You can't raise 2 children on your own. I turned back to face him, Emma's hand in mine. Jake, clinging to my other arm. You're wrong. I can't raise 2 children in a house where they're taught their worth is determined by their gender or their position in some imaginary hierarchy, but raising them in a place where they're loved and valued, where they know they matter just because they exist, that I can do. Lisa handed me the keys to the Elm Street house. Margaret Henderson would be proud, she said quietly. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our beautiful Victorian home, watching Emma and Jake play in the garden where my grandmother had once taught me to plant marigolds. Emma was showing Jake how to water the seedlings they'd planted together. No favourites, no hierarchy, just 2 kids being kids. The house had been perfectly maintained, just as Lisa had said. Every room was filled with my grandmother's furniture, her books, her photographs, including dozens of pictures of me as a child that I'd forgotten existed. It was like she'd been waiting for us to come home. I'd used part of the trust fund to start a small graphic design business that I could run from home. The rest was carefully invested for Emma and Jake's education. We had everything we needed and more than I'd ever dared to hope for. My phone buzzed with another text from my mother, the 5th one this week. They all said the same thing. They were sorry. They wanted to make things right. They missed us. David had called twice, offering to work out a compromise. My father had even shown up at the house once, standing on the porch with flowers and a speech about forgiveness. But I'd learned something important in those months of silence and peace. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back to a broken situation. It doesn't mean subjecting your children to people who see them as less valuable than other children. It means letting go of the anger while still protecting what matters most. Emma came running in from the garden, dirt on her knees and joy on her face. Mommy, can Jake and I make cookies? We want to surprise Mrs. Patterson next door because she helped us plant the tomatoes. Of course you can, sweetheart. Jake bounded in behind her. And can we make extra for the mailman? He always says hi to us. I looked at my children, really looked at them, and saw what my grandmother had seen. 2 incredible human beings who deserved to be loved completely, without conditions, without comparison. They were thriving in this house where nobody questioned their worth or made them compete for affection. That evening, as I tucked them into their beds, real beds in real bedrooms with windows that looked out on our own garden, Emma asked me the question that had been coming for weeks. "Mummy, do you think Grandma and Grandpa miss us?" I sat on the edge of her bed and smoothed her hair. "I think they do, sweetheart." "Do you miss them?" It was the hardest question she'd ever asked me, and she deserved an honest answer. I miss the people I thought they were, but I don't miss feeling like we weren't good enough. I don't miss watching you and Jake try so hard to earn love that should have been freely given. Are we better off here? I looked around her room, at the books lining her shelves, at the art supplies scattered on her desk, at the photos of our new life covering her bulletin board. "What do you think?" she smiled. "I think Great-Grandma Henderson knew exactly what she was doing." She was right. Grandma Henderson had known exactly what she was doing. She'd seen a pattern of damage and decided to break it. She'd given us not just a house and money, but something far more valuable: the knowledge that we were worth fighting for. Sometimes the people who love you most aren't the ones who share your DNA. Sometimes they're the ones who see your worth when others can't. Sometimes love means walking away from people who can't appreciate what they have until it's gone. Have you ever had to choose between staying in a situation where you weren't valued or walking away to protect what matters most? Sometimes the hardest decision is also the right decision. Sometimes the people who truly love you will prove it by letting you go when staying would hurt you more than leaving. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you'll find that the love you needed was there all along, waiting for you to be brave enough to claim it.